Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I am Sandsawks, and today we are kicking off a new series called Throwback Thursdays. I know it's real original, but we're going to start off with episode number 1, and we're talking about The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the video, and as the introduction mentioned, we are kicking off this new series, Throwback Thursdays, with a game titled The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. A very great game that the title lends itself to this series because we are indeed linking back to the past. So a lot of play on words going on there, but what I intend to do with this series is find a game that I have personal experience with from a previous generation. So when we talk about generations, we're talking about something that's not released, probably within the last 5 years or whatever. Anything that's not maybe released within the current generation console's lifespan. So if we're on PS4 and Xbox One lifespan, we'll be talking about something PS3, Xbox 360, or earlier. So obviously here we're going all the way back as far as about 1992 with the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past being on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. So what we want to do with the video is kind of give you the plot summary and then maybe break down real quick what kind of memories and impact the game had on myself. So without further ado, let's go into the game. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is the third main installment of the Legend of Zelda series, and the first and only one for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, with a slight asterisk. After the side-scrolling and more RPG-like gameplay of The Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past was a return to the overhead view and gameplay style of The Legend of Zelda. It introduced the concept of two different worlds, one dark and one light, which was revisited to an extent in its console successor, Ocarina of Time, with two time periods rather than dark and light worlds. A Link to the Past was re-released in 2002 on the Game Boy Advance system, sharing a cartridge with 4 swords. So now let's talk about the game's story and plot. The game starts with Link being awakened in the middle of the night by a telepathic plea from Princess Zelda, who tells him that she is being held prisoner in the dungeon of the castle. Now wide awake, Link finds his uncle with the sword and shield in hand. He tells Link not to leave the house, then sets off for the castle. Link ignores his uncle's warnings and follows him, only to arrive at the castle to find him gravely wounded. He gives Link his sword and shield and entrusts him with the fate of Princess Zelda. Link proceeds to rescue Zelda, and the two escape the castle through its sewer system to the sanctuary just to the north of the castle. There, the priest tells Link that the only weapon powerful enough to defeat the wizard Agahnim was the legendary Master Sword. He then sends him to find the elder Sahasrahla, who explains that not just anyone could wield the Master Sword, and that a hero must appear from the descendants of the Knights of Hyrule. To prove himself worthy of wielding the sacred blade, Link would need to acquire the 3 Pendants of Virtue. After successfully obtaining the pendants and withdrawing the blade from its pedestal in the Lost Woods, Zelda calls out to Link yet again, this time warning that the soldiers have invaded the sanctuary. Link hurries off to the sanctuary only to find that he was a moment too late, and that the soldiers had already taken Zelda off to Hyrule Castle. Once again, Link hurries to rescue her, and once again arrives too late, as Agahnim was already in the process of sending Princess Zelda to the Dark World. Upon completing this ritual, little time was needed before the sage's seal was completely broken. Link goes on to defeat Agahnim, who then draws him into the Dark World. There, Link is contacted telepathically by Sahasrahla, who tells him that he is standing in what was once the Sacred Realm, but was transformed by Ganon's evil wish to conquer the world. He then commissions Link with the task of rescuing the imprisoned maidens from the dungeons scattered across the Dark World. Upon freeing them all, Link travels to Ganon's tower, where the 7 maidens use their combined power to dispel the barrier sealing off the entrance. Link proceeds to traverse the tower and defeat Agahnim for a second time. Upon his defeat, the shadow of Ganon rises from the body, turns into a bat, and flies off into the Pyramid of Power, where Link and Ganon face off. With the power of the silver arrows and the Master Sword, Link banishes Ganon, recovers the Triforce, and by making a wish, reverts the effects of Ganon's evil reign over Hyrule and restores the land to its former glory. So there you have it, kind of the plot, story, and breakdown on The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So real briefly, I just want to speak about what the game means to me. So, the first game I've ever played in my entire life that I can recall was the original Legend of Zelda. So, my cousin, around the time this game came out, he had already had a Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which I did not, and he brought it over and we played it together, and just had a fantastic time with it. And it was really the first time I had played a game that had a sequel launch on a new generation console. You know, obviously from the original being on Nintendo and this one being on Super Nintendo. So, I also remember that this game was so good that it actually caused me to get my first job and save up towards buying a Super Nintendo, which, if I recall correctly, the Super Nintendo came with Killer Instinct, which I won't go off on a tangent about, but that was a great game. But the only game I bought myself to come with the system was Legend of Zelda, and it's the first game I popped in my own personal Super Nintendo and just played it from start to finish. The game was also so good, and I had played it so much that several years into it at a friend's house, you know, I don't remember if it was during the summer or after school, and this is sometime when I'm like maybe 12 or 13 or something around that age. I would just go over to his house, pop it in, play, and actually had a notebook, and I was creating my own walkthrough for the game because we didn't have very much internet back then. We had a little bit. Is right when the internet first started getting popular for people my age. So there it is. So one thing I wanted to note that I mentioned during the plot story summary is that this game is listed as the only one that was on, the only Zelda game that was on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and that's technically and kind of not technically true. And I didn't know about this until recently when I was doing some research for this game. Was that and I'm gonna have to check my sources, so feel free to get on Google and back this up. But I remember I came across a video where someone said that there was kind of like a almost a sequel to this, not like they came up with a new story and this and that, but it was almost like a modded version of this game that Japan put out on the Super Famicom, and I guess it was when they were testing some streaming services, and I mean this is going back, you know, to it has to be the late 90s. But they released a second game of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past in Japan only, and you could only play it during there was some weird streaming service that I unfortunately I don't know enough of it off the top of my head. I just remember watching that video, but you should look it up. If I find the video, I'll link it down in the description so you can see it, because it was very interesting to see that Japan was tinkering with these streaming services like PlayStation and Xbox and them do now. So I think that wraps it up for this, our first episode. I'm kind of tinkering with, you know, playing with how we want these videos to really display themselves and what we want them to be about. So this one may be a little bit lackluster, but I want to hear your thoughts, not only just on the series, which I do. If you have suggestions or things you want to hear or see about in how the series is displayed to you guys in these videos, please let me know. If you have comments or anything that you want to talk about with this game in particular, please put them down in the comments section. I want to know about those as well. While you're down there, please make sure to give the video a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted every time I go live or whenever we upload new content. Bye-bye.